So this particular issue of video games is something I feel that is not talked about enough. And video games, I feel, don't get the same respect that other mediums of entertainment get, such as, TV, music, and things like that. And it's made me think a lot about why is that? Why are video games, not as respected as TV or music or, reading a book? Like those things are more widely accepted to the general public. And part of that, I think, is video games have always been kind of niche. And video games are relatively a new technology, right? They haven't been around as long as music or TV. I mean, TV has been around, I don't know, past 100 years or so, and music has been around since the dawn of mankind, for all we know. And or even reading books, right? That's a form of entertainment that people widely accept. But video games are relatively new technology. I mean, when did Atari, I think, was the first system that came out? When was that? 1970, something like that. So I think that's part of the reason is that it's new. And I think a lot of people have not kept up with the technological changes, like how advanced video games have become. I mean, when you look at some video games like God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, I mean, they have a whole freaking team that worked on these games, like writers and producers. I mean, it's like a full-blown staff for a movie, right? But you still don't see video games getting that same respect. There's been so many times in my life, and in my line of work too, where I work really personally with like people close, like it's a more intimate job that I have. And there's been times where people ask me, what do you like to do for fun? Or what are you going to do this weekend? And yes, sometimes I go out to eat and, you go hang out with family, whatever, all that typical stuff. But one thing I've kind of learned about the general public is like, if I say video games, those people are going to look at me very differently, right? Like less of a professional, like maybe even childish, because of the stigma that's attached to video games. And I just find that kind of really annoying, right? Because you can waste your time doing anything. You can waste your time reading too many books. I've had people tell me, I stayed up too late last night because I just couldn't stop reading. Or let me rephrase that. You could do things that can harm you in excess or at the wrong time, right? So you stayed up too late reading a book. Okay, that's harmful. Or you just read books for 8 hours in a day. I mean, granted, you don't hear about that as much, but I mean, technically it's still possible, right? And it would still be considered harmful to you. And same thing applies to, movies or music, right? You could listen to music too much. You could watch movies too much. How many times do people talk about binge watching a show, right? And no one really bats an eye too much to that. It's like, I gotta do this thing. That's what the general public says. But the moment you mention video games, it's like people's heads just like freaking explode. And it's like they haven't adapted or changed or realized how video games have changed, from being Atari where you're just bouncing a ball across the screen, right? Like it's not the same. Like these games have advanced stories and writers and just like a movie, and it's an art form. And it's not yet respected as an art form in the general public. It hasn't reached that point. I'm hoping as we get older and the younger generation who has grown up more with video games, that it becomes more widely accepted as an art. To me, it's an art. You watch a good movie or you see a beautiful movie and it touches you, and you at the end of the movie, you're just like, man, you just really feel it, right? I've had that same feeling or more with certain video games. Like after I finished Dragon Age Origins, I was just kind of like, holy shit, man, that game was amazing. The story was so good. Like this is a freaking piece of art. And it hasn't quite reached that level to the masses yet. I do think it will eventually, hopefully. I'm just kind of ranting here, but there's been so many times in my life, even on YouTube, like I'm a very small channel, but like comments and stuff would be like, oh, you got anime plushies in the background, or there's this typical like association too, I think, with like being a man. As people say, like that's the one I get the most because I'm like a bald bearded guy. I don't know if that makes people think, oh, you're supposed to be a real masculine dude. But I'll get stuff like, oh, that's so childish. That's a waste of time. Look at those anime plushies in the background, which that's a whole nother topic too. The anime, right? Anime has different genres, like adult genres. It's just animated, but that's a whole different thing. I don't want to talk about that in particular. But they'll be like, oh, you're a man. You're supposed to, mow the grass and be a handyman, and you can't play video games because that's childish. Like some video games are for children, yes, but some video games are also for adults, just like some movies are for children. and some movies are for adults. And just because someone plays video games, or just because someone likes some anime, doesn't mean that they're a child, okay? I know people that with video games, there's been addiction problems where people have played too much. I understand where it's coming from, but it's just not that black and white. Yes, if I play, Diablo 2 or whatever for 24 hours and don't sleep and get a blood clot in my leg and die, yeah, that's bad. But that's something taken into excess. And these like stories get sensationalized. And that's the saying, like, I work a full-time job. I pay my bills. I take care of myself. I work out. I eat healthy. If I want to play a video game for a couple hours to relax, then why is that any different than watching a movie or reading a book or listening to some music? So anybody that tells you guys in your life that video games, you're wasting your time, you're not an adult, you're not a man, whatever, just freaking ignore them. It's stupid. They're ignorant. They don't understand how video games have changed, how video games have deep stories now. They don't understand, apparently, or even if you watch anime. I mean, if you're just laying around watching anime all day, yes, it's bad, okay? Don't live in a fantasy world. Like, stay with reality, fair enough, but don't listen to them. If you're taking care of yourself and it's not a bad addiction, don't listen to them when they tell you, like, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's childish. That's this, that's that. Any of that technically can be childish, okay? Or can waste your time, or can be bad for you in excess. So just be who you want to be. If you enjoy playing video games and you're taking care of yourself, then just screw them. Play your video games. I guess what made me gain a big respect for video games too, I'll kind of share some of my personal moments in my life. So I grew up pretty poor, pretty white trash. Like, it was a pretty dysfunctional home. And I'll never forget, I grew up playing like Mario on Nintendo. I think I might have played a little bit of Atari, not too much. And I played a little bit of Zelda, Nintendo 64, Super Mario 64, Castlevania. I played all kinds of games on there. And I'll never forget, in that environment, the first game I played, it was a game called Might and Magic. And it was called Might and Magic Day of the Destroyer. And it was kind of this weird game where you like have these characters at the bottom of the screen. And it was a fantasy RPG. And I remember my father let me play the game. I was probably about 10 years old. And I just escaped and was like, I want to say hooked. It makes it sound bad. At the time, yeah, I was hooked. It was like, but I played that game. You couldn't believe how much I like leveled my character and got really into the game, right? And that just took off. And then I ended up playing like, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Icewind Dale. Like, my dad was a real piece of shit, but he had some pretty cool interest in some video games. So I at least got to play some cool RPG games. And I think the thing that I realized when I was playing, Might and Magic and Baldur's Gate or Dragon Age Origins, is you escape into this beautiful world with this deep in-depth lore and story, and it's different. The cool thing about video games is it's different, as in like you have like some control, right? Like when you're watching a movie, you don't really have control. You're kind of just watching people do things. But the cool thing about a video game is you're the freaking person, right? You can like explore, go where you want to go. You can talk to people and change the courses of events in the game. And it's like this whole entire world. But that made me realize and gave me a true appreciation for video games as an art. Or even staying up, playing Diablo 2. Like I did have a bad Diablo 2 addiction. I will admit that. Like, I was probably like 13 years old, maybe around the time. And me and my brother would like rotate shifts. And we were actually like homeless for a bit, like bouncing back and forth. And eventually the schools found out, we got sent to school. Yeah, I would wake up and play, and then he would go to sleep. And yeah, that's bad. That was bad. I'll admit that. But that's an extreme situation. That's not most people. And it helped me escape. It helped me escape the bad situation. It helped me get out of it. And that was kind of the beauty of it, right? That saved me in a bad environment. I was able to enjoy art. I recognized, hey, this is an art. This is a beautiful thing. I just hyper-focused on it, and I escaped into this world. That kind of gave me a true appreciation for video games from the beginning. Now, long-term, is this probably not good if I just constantly escape into a video game world? Of course. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is video games deserve a lot more respect. They deserve to be treated as an art because they are an art. People can make beautiful games, just like they make a beautiful movie or make beautiful music. But it's something I've been thinking a lot about. I just kind of wanted to rant about it and talk about it and kind of share my experiences with you guys. Let me know in the comments below. Have you guys had experiences like this in your life, or people are kind of putting you down for playing video games and saying it's a waste of time, but on one hand, acting like movies and all these other things can't be a waste of time too. Or maybe you think video games are a waste of time. I'd like to hear your argument. If that's what you think, why do you think that video games are more of a waste of time relative to movies or music or whatever? I mean, I think, like I said, I think if you overindulge in anything and too much, it can be a bad thing. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope to see you all on the next one.